If you just started playing Waterpark Simulator or have already spent a few hours in the game, there's one thing you will realize very quickly. Managing a water park is much more chaotic and strategic than it seems. Today, I've put together 10 advanced tips that truly make a difference in version 1.0. Things the game doesn't explain very well, but that completely change the way you build, organize, and profit from your park. If you want to move past the basics and start genuinely optimizing, stay until the end because some of these are going to save your save. The customizable slide system in Waterpark Simulator 1.0 is absurdly powerful, but it's also where a lot of people accidentally sabotage themselves. During my first few hours, I got overly excited building these monsters full of loops and spirals, only to watch guests glitch out, queues jam up, and satisfaction plummet. The preview mode is not optional. It is practically mandatory if you want to play seriously. Before opening any slide, I always test run it, just like a QA check, looking out for potential trouble spots. There are many designs that look incredible visually, but in practice, they break the flow or cause guests to simply give up halfway through. When that happens, there is no saving it, because the game punishes you directly in the ratings. Another major trap is extreme angles. You feel tempted to exaggerate, making absurd drops or long, unsupported sections, but the system still doesn't handle that well. I've wasted a lot of time trying to force a more radical design, thinking it would generate more fun, when in reality, it only created bottlenecks. Today, I think more like a flow designer, rather than just someone creating something visually insane. Now, when you get it right, that's when the game rewards you heavily. Slides with 3 or more well-planned rotations or drops easily hit the fun rating required for the diamond level, and that completely changes the park's performance. So the secret isn't just making something crazy, it's making something crazy that actually works. That balance between creativity and stability is where the game truly shines. In the beginning, it's very easy to ignore these quest lines because they seem like just another side system. But in practice, they are practically the hidden heart of progression. Each NPC there isn't just a random little quest, they are literally your access to 3 different styles of park expansion. Once you realize that, the game stops being just about building pretty water slides and turns into a long-term planning game. The trick, for me, is choosing one theme and sticking with it to the end without getting distracted. Aztec, Sea, or Pirate, it doesn't matter too much which one you choose first, but rather that you commit to one of them until you unlock the giant slide at the end. These slides are massive, not just visually, but in their impact on the park. They easily become the main attraction, draw in visitor traffic, and go a long way toward accelerating your economy. If you split your currency among all 3 trees, you delay the growth spike that these slides provide. Now, here's the detail that many people get wrong: spending all your coins the moment you earn them. It gives a good feeling of fast progress, but it's a bit of a trap. I've done that before and ended up with an efficient park that felt soulless, and that weighs heavily on the overall rating. The game values atmosphere quite a bit, and ignoring that can stall your progress later on, especially when you start depending on higher ratings to unlock certain things. So the ideal approach is to balance it. Push hard down one tree until you reach the giant slide, but always hold back a portion of your coins to invest in strategic decoration. It's not just aesthetics, it's actual park performance. When you start treating decoration as part of optimization rather than just ornamentation, the game opens up much more. It's the kind of detail that separates a functional park from one that genuinely grows fast and keeps visitors happy. Waterpark Simulator becomes a completely different game when you stop trying to do everything at once and start truly dividing roles. It's not just everyone does a little bit, it's each person taking on a fixed role and playing as if that were literally their job inside the park. The security role, for example, is much more important than it seems, especially at night. Wrong wristbands or people entering where they shouldn't leads to chaos very quickly. And if no one is focused exclusively on that, you start losing control of the park without realizing it. I see a lot of people neglecting this and then wondering why the park turns into total disorder when traffic picks up. Now, cleaning and restocking is the kind of job nobody wants to do, but when there isn't someone dedicated to it, the park degrades very fast. Trash accumulating, items running out, visitor satisfaction dropping. It's that classic simulator domino effect. Meanwhile, the construction/maintenance person keeps everything running smoothly, saving you from having to stop everything in the middle of chaos to fix a structural problem. And the detail that really ties it all together is the walkie-talkies. It seems like just an extra feature, but when used right, it basically becomes the nervous system of your team. You can coordinate everything in real time without having to run all over the map. Now, the megaphone and trumpet, they are funny, I won't lie, but if the crew starts abusing them, it turns into more sabotage than help. It's the classic case. Fun for 5 minutes, destructive after that. Night mode is the kind of feature that seems purely aesthetic at first, but in practice, it completely changes the game. When I first unlocked it, I thought it was just a way to make the park look prettier at night, until I realized that costs go up and management becomes much more demanding. Staff gets more expensive, and if you aren't prepared, your profits vanish quickly. At the same time, the game gives you a very interesting advantage. Cheaters increase, but they become much easier to identify because of the wristbands glowing in the dark. This completely shifts the dynamic, giving you more control as long as you have enough security to take action. Without security, it turns into a silent chaos that slowly corrodes your ratings without you noticing. And that's where night mode truly proves its worth. Atmosphere and staff. When you invest in well-positioned lighting, add mascots, and have security patrolling properly, your rating climbs in a very consistent way. It's not just aesthetics, it's pure mechanics influencing satisfaction. I started treating lighting almost as essential infrastructure, not just decoration. But the main point is timing. Opening night mode too early is asking for pain. Nowadays, I only activate it when I already have at least 1 or 2 mascots and a minimally efficient security team. Only then does the mode stop being a risk and turn into a reputation-boosting machine. That's the moment the game shifts from surviving to truly optimizing the park. It took me a while to appreciate security because I thought the boxing glove handled things well enough, but there is no comparison. Security simply erases the problem. Troublesome visitors disappear quickly without causing a domino effect in the queue or ruining other people's experiences. And the most interesting part is how mascots fit into this as the other side of the coin. While security cleans up the negatives, mascots constantly inflate the positives. They aren't just cosmetics walking around the map. They are basically mobile happiness buffs. When you position them walking past long queues and food areas, you keep people's moods high even when the park is starting to get crowded. The secret, in my experience, is thinking of this as a combined system rather than separate ones. If you only use security, you solve the chaos, but you don't improve the mood. If you only use mascots, you improve the mood, but let problems pile up. When you combine the two, you create a self-stabilizing park. Happy visitors come in, troublemakers are removed quickly, and the flow remains healthy. And that detail of hiring security before expanding, especially on the beach map and in night mode, is crucial. Those scenarios scale the chaos very fast, and if you grow without that support, it snowballs out of control. I've been there, a big, beautiful park, but completely out of control. Once I started prioritizing security early and using mascots strategically, the game became much more consistent and predictable. The beach map isn't just a pretty Miami neon-style backdrop. The ocean becomes an active piece of your layout. Once you grasp that, you can come up with much more organic ideas than on the standard map. Using the ocean as an extension of the park is the ultimate trick. Instead of forcing artificial pools everywhere, you can design slides that end directly in the sea, which saves space and gives the park a much more natural feel. I think that's precisely where the map starts to shine, because it rewards those who think outside the standard, organized grid box of the other maps. A very common mistake is trying to mentally import your old layout. It doesn't work. This map demands a total fresh start, especially because visitor flow changes when you have the beach as your main attraction point. If you insist on replicating old structures, the park will work, but it will never reach the maximum potential this map offers. Now, the detail that most impacts guest retention is the placement of shade and loungers near the beach. This greatly increases the amount of time people stay there, and time spent in the park means more consumption, higher satisfaction, and more money coming in. It's the kind of adjustment that doesn't seem all that important at first, but when you get it right, park performance takes a very visible leap. Early on, I still played the more traditional way, walking everywhere, wasting time, going from one end to the other, until I got the plunger gun. From then on, it was a completely different game. It basically works like a grappling hook, and in large parks, that isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. You save an absurd amount of time and can react much faster to any issue. The paint gun is another tool that looks simple, but once you understand its potential, there's no turning back. Manually painting while walking around the map becomes a thing of the past. With it, you can customize slides and walls from a distance, quickly adjust visuals, and keep the park looking high-end without breaking your management rhythm. I started using it not just for aesthetics, but as a genuine productivity tool. Now, the game gets a bit wild, in a good way, with the duck gun and the duck-shaped water cannon. It seems like a joke, but it has real utility. The water cannon, for instance, helps clear out guests and also serves as a somewhat chaotic form of crowd control, especially if you're dealing with very crowded areas. In multiplayer, this turns into almost its own mechanic of organized chaos. What these tools do is transform you from a manager stuck on the ground to someone with total control over the park. Mobility, agility, and even guest interaction become much more dynamic. Once you get used to this kit, going back to playing without it feels almost wrong because of how much slower it gets. The Mafia questline is the kind of mechanic that feels way too tempting to ignore. Easy money, fast, no bureaucracy, and precisely because of that, it's dangerous. The first time I used it, I had that "now we're talking" feeling because you can greatly accelerate the park's pace, especially when you're still in that phase where everything feels expensive and slow. And to be fair, it really works, especially if you use it for a clear objective. Taking out a loan to unlock a massive slide or make a major expansion leap on the beach map can completely transform your park. You go from stalled growth to an almost immediate visitor peak. It's the kind of move that, if timed right, puts you several steps ahead. The problem is what comes after. The game doesn't punish you instantly, but it charges interest that starts weighing you down right when you think you're stabilizing. If your park isn't generating consistent revenue yet, that debt becomes an anchor. I've been trapped in this cycle of growing too fast and then spending a long time just fixing the financial damage, which totally breaks the flow. So for me, the Mafia is a tool, not a primary strategy. I use it when I know exactly how I'm going to pay it back, or when I'm on hard mode and need to get out of a bad situation immediately. Other than that, I prefer to build more solidly, because in the end, this system rewards those who think a few steps ahead, not just those who grow the fastest in the short term. The weather system isn't just a visual detail for variety. It directly impacts visitor behavior and your park's performance. If you ignore it, you are basically leaving money and efficiency on the table. The heat wave is the best example of this. When that extreme heat hits, drink consumption skyrockets, and if you aren't prepared with well-stocked and well-positioned vending spots, you miss out on a giant profit opportunity. At the same time, the need for shade and loungers increases significantly, so a park that was previously fine will quickly see satisfaction drop if it lacks the infrastructure to handle that peak. Now, special events are almost like mini challenges that pop up in the middle of your run. Touristic buses arriving out of nowhere, or even more chaotic situations like aliens trying to abduct guests, might seem like random chaos, but they are actually perfect moments to farm XP and money. However, you can't improvise your response. If you're slow or disorganized, it turns into a mess instead of an opportunity. That's why one thing I always do is check the weather before opening the park and adjust everything accordingly. It seems like a small detail, but it completely changes your preparedness for the day. When you start anticipating these variations instead of just reacting to them, the game flows much more smoothly, and you feel like you have real control over the situation. Reaching the diamond rating isn't just about playing well, it's about playing consistently. The game now demands much more complete management, and having an amazing park for a few minutes won't cut it. You need to keep cleanliness and fun high at all times. It took me a while to understand this because I kept focusing only on building new things while the basics started slipping and brought my rating down with them. A turning point for me was starting to take the museum questlines seriously. At first, it feels secondary, but those are what unlock themes and those massive slides that genuinely elevate the park's level. This content makes a direct difference in fun, and when you combine that with a well-thought-out layout, the leap in rating comes almost automatically. Speaking of layout, zip lines are incredible, and a lot of people underestimate them. Connecting distant areas isn't just a quality of life feature, it's flow optimization. Guests get where they want faster, queues balance out better, and overall satisfaction rises. I started viewing zip lines as essential infrastructure, almost on the same level as well-planned pathways. And that brings us to the complete package. Food variety, working amenities, and a well-coordinated team. The popcorn stand helps diversify, and those details matter more than they seem. Benches now restore energy, so positioning matters a great deal. In multiplayer, there's no way around it. If security, mascots, and cleaning aren't aligned, the park simply won't sustain a diamond rating. When all of that clicks, you can feel the game running smoothly, and your rating rises as a natural consequence.